Welcome, everybody. Today is our second installment in our six-session series. I'm trying to give you some insider information and techniques to move your career forward to thrive. Today we're going to be talking about interview formats and approaches. And Microsoft and Personified, a career builder company, have partnered together to provide you with this information. I'm Stefan Martel, your presenter for today. I'm a senior consultant for Personified. And previously I was with DBM, an outplacement company, working with their International Center for Executive Options, coaching senior executives on their career paths. And I've also been a key player on the staffing side of things, responsible for hiring IT and managing staffing teams for companies like Honeywell, Allied Signal, in the pharmaceutical industry with Angiotech, and then up in Canada with Canada's national telecom, TELUS. And beyond my corporate roles, I've incubated and created some high-tech organizations, spinning Honeywell IT into companies that have achieved some tremendous market success. So let's get started here with our first poll question, everybody. Have you been able to tell the different types of interviews, techniques that interviewers have used, behavioral styles, panel interviews, things like that? Terrific. We're getting a ton of yes responses on that. Well, we're going to be able to go over some of those different types of interview techniques today and tell you a little bit more about them. So we're going to start with the interview different objectives, the purposes, the types. We're going to talk a little bit about the STAR format for answering them, the situation, the action, and the result. Talk about tackling difficult questions out there. And also the whiteboard, which I think is such a big part of today in the interview process. And then finally, how to follow up. So there are two types of objectives going on here. There's your objectives, and then there are the company objectives. So while it's supposed to be a two-way exchange, ironically, it tends to be a little bit adversarial. You're nervous, the interview's nervous, the company's looking to spend a lot of money on this position. There are all sorts of variables at play here. The company wants to determine the future performance. Can you do the job? That's the main goal of their interview. And yet you want to also predict your ability to have success in the organization. So this is a huge match, even though it seems to be adversarial, where they're asking you a lot of questions and sort of trying to pin you down on some things, and you're really trying to tell them how successful you've been. And then finally we get to goodwill. They want to make you feel that the company is a good organization. They want you to work there. They want you to select their organization as one of theirs. And at the same time, you're trying to create that feeling of goodwill, that you're a positive contributor, that you can do something for the organization. And then finally, the chemistry. This is the perfect match. Are you the best fit for the company? But at the same time, you have to ask, does the company offer me the opportunities that I want for advancement, or the experiences that I want? So you're basically each pre-qualifying each other during this interview process, and it's important to remember that there's both sides to this equation. So let's get right into the formats. When considering the two different types of formats, either a face-to-face or more of a distance interview, during the distance interview, you really have to make up for the lack of visual contact. People's communications today are about 75% visual, about 12% listening and speaking combined, with the other balance being the other senses. So if you can imagine, you're going to have to go ahead and literally compensate for a lack of 75% of somebody on the other side senses. You have to rely on auditory feedback and be disciplined enough to keep your focus. A lot of people ask me about the expected and unexpected phone interview. And my adage is always turn the unexpected into an expected call. So if you get that unexpected phone call saying, can we chat for a few minutes about this role, make sure that you have proper access to materials near your phone, you're in a quiet space, and you've really got an opportunity where you can focus in on this. For me, I really want to express my enthusiasm that they've called me. Hey, I'm so happy that you've called. But I also want to schedule the call. I really want to be able to control what's going on with that phone call. And so I'll say, hey, I'm so happy you've called. I have about 5 minutes before I have to run into a meeting. can we schedule a time to talk, or is 5 minutes going to be enough? Almost all the recruiters I know will go ahead and look forward to actually scheduling the call because they know that you're going to be accountable for that time, and they're going to be able to put it into their calendar. One of the other parts about the doing this, whether it's a teleconference or a video or a phone, is your attitude. You really do have to smile. I know it seems a little silly and a little trite, but a negative or uneasy attitude shows itself over the phone. One of my favorite tricks is to go ahead and play a funny YouTube video just before a call starts like this. My one today is the one where the gazelle is going across the plains of Africa and runs headlong into the tree with the 2 lions underneath. Classic funny one. A couple of other rules: no speakerphones, no chewing gum, no background noise. I do a lot of conference calls, and somebody's always got a big, loud office going on, a cube structure, and you know, somebody all of a sudden decides to throw a birthday party, and it comes through on the conference call, and you're just going, oh, wow. So consider the environment that you're in and make sure you're in a good setting. Go ahead and book yourself a conference room if you need to. Go out to your car on your cell phone. One of the other things is to really enforce a dress code. I know it sounds silly, but if we all get very comfortable and we'll go ahead and do these calls early in the morning or something, and people do it in their PJs and whatnot, the reality is it does make a difference. So treat it like you would a real interview. From the face-to-face standpoint, oh, my apologies, the teleconference, one other point. Ask who's asking your questions. Have people identify themselves on the phone. And check back in with statements that say, you know, does this answer your question, or is that how you handle it at Company X? So your goal from the distance standpoint is to create a face-to-face. So now that you've got the face-to-face interview, we're going to cover off some of the specific types of techniques that go on in face-to-face interviews in another slide, but there's just some general rules that apply to all interviews. So first of all, eye contact is a big one. Be positive, project some energy and enthusiasm. Listen carefully and adapt. Be sensitive to the style of the interviewer. If the interviewer is talking slowly, then slow down your response. Just don't go rushing into the answer because that'll just behaviorally turn somebody off from a personality standpoint. Respond succinctly. Don't talk too much. My rule is that if you have to take a breath in the middle of your sentence, it's probably too long. And don't forget to ask for the position. For panel interviews or multiple interviewers where there's more than just you and one interviewer, you need to make sure that you spend a few minutes talking with each individual, just one-on-one. When the question is asked, make your initial eye contact with the person who's asking the question, and then include the other panel members in your answer. So scan from one face to the next, pausing briefly on each. This takes some practice. Next time you're at dinner with some friends, give it a try. Or get a group together over a lunch and just try it. It really takes a bit of practice. Another key in a multiple interviewer situation is to cross-reference the question with one that's already been asked by a different interviewer. For example, to expand on my answer to Frank, my experience in development also includes, and you just keep going from there. So in this way, you're reinforcing the positive that you've already brought up, and you're addressing two panel members at the same time because you're re-engaging Frank, who's checked out because it's not his question, and you're engaging the specific interviewer. So let's talk a little bit about the interview styles right now. There are basically 6 styles. There's a screening interview, a non-directive interview, behavioral, structured, panel, and presentation. We'll get into all of these a little bit. So screening is the gatekeeper's interview. It's sort of the first cut. This is usually the phone interview. Here they're looking for reasons to not consider moving forward. It's not a positive interview. It's really a negative. They're trying to find reasons to kind of kick you out of the process. It can seem very informal, and don't be lulled into the fact that it might be a little bit informal. It's one of the most important parts of the interview. A non-directed interview is structured and flexible. It includes more conversation than just a regular interview. It's interesting because it was originally labeled as a psychotherapeutic intervention by the American psychologist Carl Rogers. And he basically started things with, tell me about yourself, or tell me what happened today in a psychological setting. So the key to this is research. While you could give them a chronology from your birth to today, when they say, tell me about yourself, what you really have to do is focus on the skills that are important. So you might answer them something with, if the question is, tell me about yourself, well, I believe that my team leadership skills would benefit you the most. For example, I'm just getting a little ahead of myself here. We'll get into the details of the response when I get to the star part. But the key here is to take control of the interview and really direct the responses into your skills and your strengths. The most favorite format, behavioral. Behavioral is past performance determines future performance, and it's the most common interview format today. This is a great opportunity to tell people how you have done the role in the past. While there's lots of discussions about how to handle this, there are two big keys. First is the feedback, which is to close your comments with a question. Do you think that similar action would happen here, for example? Or is that how you would go ahead and develop this? And the second is to express continuous improvement. During this development cycle, I learned X, and if I had the opportunity to do it again, I would do this differently. Those are the two biggest keys to behavioral interview questions. So once again, first is feedback. Do you think this would happen here? And the secondly is showing continuous improvement. One big hint for the behavioral interview is that if you read the job description carefully, you can almost determine what the questions are going to be. So if we take a look at a software architect position, for example, and one of the lines in the job description says, partner with an architecture team to create an executable architecture, your response needs to be creating a story around how you've done that. And so you can literally go through those job descriptions and be prepared. Maybe one of the parts is working with various engineering leads or partnering for design. So how have you done those areas? How have you done those things? Structured. Structured interviews are really just the opposite of non-directed. They're sometimes called a pattern interview. Every interviewer asks each candidate the exact same question. So they're really able to compare apples to apples. I'll tell you one thing. Most interviewers who ask this style, they're probably more nervous than you are. So in here, in structured and behavioral, the STAR technique works. And we're going to go into that in just the next little bit. Panel interview, we talked a little bit about. Although it can be quite intimidating, again, remember to engage with each individual interviewer and realize that most of them have a purpose for being there, and they're evaluating some part of this. Sorry, I forgot my little check mark there. Presentation. We're going to talk about this during the whiteboard piece, but fundamentally this is the part where you're given a problem or a challenge, or you're asked to present maybe a paper you've written. So this is getting to be very common today, whether the audience is large or small. This format takes a lot of practice and preparation. You need to communicate everything in the first few minutes and then compile your supporting information on top of that. Make your gestures big and broad if you're in a large setting, and decide up front whether you're going to handle questions midway through or during the presentation or maybe at the end. And ask yourself here, what is your audience looking for? What are you trying to have them walk away with? So take a look at your content, your structure, and delivery, and make sure that they've actually got something to walk away with. Many interviews blend and cross these styles. You can have a behavioral screening, but it's conducted in a panel environment. So the key is really to maintain your composure and to continue to illustrate your accomplishments. At the end of the day, you really want them to feel like what it's going to be like with you in the role. So, what do you guys have the most challenge with? Phone screens, behavioral stress, panel. Great poll question for you guys to answer. Wow, evenly split. There we go. Presentations, yeah. I think the stress interviews and presentations are definitely the toughest parts of these things. I've got one great question here, which is illegal questions. How do you handle illegal questions? Well, I think sometimes you have to take a look at the intent behind the question. There's really two ways. You can look at the intent and you can answer it, or you can tell people, I'm sorry, but this, how is this relevant to the interview? You can go that direction. But I think from most interviewers that I've met that sort of stumble into illegal areas, they're really trying to get to something. For example, I've often heard, well, he asked me about kids or something like that, and well, in kids, are they just trying to understand if you're available to work 24/7, or if you'll carry your pager, or how that'll work? So try to reframe that illegal part of it, and then if they continue to persist in asking that, fundamentally just let them know that that's just not relevant to the role, and see if they move off of that. There we go. So, interviewers. So, part of the best success for interviewing is to be able to understand the interviewer. And in this case, there's two components. There's the style that they have, and there's the role that they have. So it's really important to try to focus on understanding where they're coming from. If they're a skilled interviewer, they're going to introduce themselves, they're going to outline the agenda. And if they're inexperienced, they're going to rush into the interview, sort of leaving you uncertain as to the expectations or the goals. So ask them about their role in the company and their position. Ask them what they hope to cover in the interview if they're not sort of going over it already. One of my favorite questions is to ask them what their pain points have been with the position and what they're really looking for. By carefully qualifying the interviewer's motives and vision, you can really influence and tailor your responses that are going to give you an advantage to other candidates. And quite frankly, you might even be reminding them of their focus. Most interviewers sort of walk in after running out of another meeting, have looked at your resume for about 30 seconds, and are now just launching into it. So by asking them what the pain points are, you're really reminding them of their focus in the role. Now, you're going to encounter a wide range of interview styles as you move through your job search. The key is to be ready and to stay calm and grounded during the interview. Some people can be casual, others can be adversarial and really challenging. In every case, it's up to you to sort of manage the interview in that sense. And by that I mean it's really just going ahead and re-emphasizing your skills and your abilities and how you bring them in. If you do encounter an interviewer who doesn't listen and just talks, you have to ask yourself, is this the type of manager or is this the type of relationship that I want to have? If they're adversarial, you need to focus on defusing their frustration and really talk to them about what's been the most challenging part of the position and the team they're trying to manage. Chances are they're not being adversarial with you, they're just frustrated in not achieving their goals. So if you've done your research, completed your SWOT analysis, and done all of that part of it, then it's a matter of going ahead and just focusing your energy on maintaining your experiences and your skill sets. I have another question here. Well, what if I just don't like the interviewer? That happens. And I think you have to, when you look at that, you have to actually say to yourself, okay, is this a manager? Is this a part of the team? And maybe it's not, maybe you're just getting that first hour. Maybe they just came out of a horrendous meeting. Maybe they just found out that their project that they had been hoping to work on and getting transferred to has all blown up. So I would give it a couple of interviews and seeing if you still don't like that interviewer, you still don't like that individual, and they are going to be your boss, then maybe you have to really consider that opportunity. So in our last presentation, we talked a little bit about research. The whole discussion was about research. So we talked about SWOT, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So very quickly, I just want to refresh everybody's on this and and basically ensure that you identify your vision with your strengths and get the alignment there and create targets from your research in that sense. So if you take some actions to plan, to do some research, to outline a SWOT, you're going to be in great shape when it comes to the interview. So the key to answering most of these, a question about SWOT. So it's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, SWOT. And our last discussion, we went over all of the quadrants of that and how to go ahead and build a SWOT piece. So the STAR analogy is situation or task. So what problem, situation, challenge, task did you address? What action did you take, or the people that you managed? And the results. What were the results in quantifiable terms? And by quantifiable terms, I mean profits, revenue, productivity, efficiency, or image. Maybe increased market share. So the key is to be a short storyteller. The old parable is facts tell, but stories sell. And it's really the truth. We don't remember what the thing when our grandparents say they walked uphill in school in the snow both directions. It's impossible, of course. You don't remember what they were trying to tell us, but we remember that they went through some terrific hardship or something like that. And that's the same thing in an interview. So if you use the STAR format, you can almost answer any question that an interviewer throws at you. Again, it focuses a lot on the behavioral strategy, which is that past behavior dictates future behavior. So as you work on the SWOT analysis, you can identify some of your key achievements that have resulted in some cost savings, maybe some creative code solutions, and you've developed an inventory of stories that you can now pull on to give you some good examples. So ask yourself, did I call attention to a wasteful procedure? Did I save the company money or time? Did I actually get that code developed a lot faster? Did I point out the need, creating for a new manual, report, procedure? Maybe there's a test procedure that you did. So it takes a bit of practice to structure your answers this way. But once you try a few, and you have to practice this, you become really great at responding. So let me give you a couple of examples. So I designed and developed a generic and extensible RDBMS to XML translation software component written in C++. I also packaged that as an ATL COM object that enabled the import and export of data from an SQL database, though we were using Oracle, into an XML format that the users could really use effectively and efficiently. So that would be one good start example. Another one was that I developed an XML mapping schema that modeled the internal object relationships of their knowledge representation product and mapped them into a relational form suitable for use by adapter classes intended for the mapping of an RDBS data source. And that was in Java. So you can get into those kinds of things. Another one is that maybe I designed and developed a middleware application. And I did that in C++ with a SQL backend. It had an ASAP front end that enabled the client to really customize it in real time on their needs. And so you could expose different parts of the catalog based on the different client types. And you talk about how that increased efficiency for the users at the back end. So difficult questions are one of my favorites. So questions directed at you. Management questions, hypothetical stumpers. We're going to do some of these. We all dread the difficult interview question. It puts me into an inner state of panic. It's really difficult to analyze very quickly what is the motivation of the interviewer when they do this. But I think there are three things that you can do to tackle these, and they work in almost any situation. So again, we come back to the preparation. understand your skills, but don't be afraid to qualify the question and to probe a little bit. Many people think it's a sign of weakness to not answer a question right off the bat, but the reality is sometimes you have to really rephrase and understand. If you rush into an answer because you're panicked, you might end up doing more harm than actually trying to qualify the question a little bit. And then finally, practice. We're going to talk about practice over and over again, but this is something you really do have to do. So examples of questions that directed at you that would be difficult are, why should I hire you? Or, what can you do for us that someone else can't? So again, coming back to that SWOT analysis and that resume homework, if you go through and research what you managed to accomplish and what you feel your strengths are, those are easy questions to address. On the management side, be ready for questions that ask you about your management style, how you've resolved poor performance, how you've developed top performers. And be expected to be challenged on these answers that you give. What would you do differently again, or did that really resolve the problem? Did the person end up performing? Should you have cut them or fired them sooner? Hypothetical questions are designed to give us an imaginary situation to test your problem-solving skills. Now, here's a big hint. There is really no hypothetical question. That hypothetical question they're asking has to relate to something that they are experiencing a pain point on right now in their job. So, again, try to relate it back to a scenario that you've been given, and don't be afraid to ask some more detailed questions about it. Because some people will just throw you into something, and if you ask more questions about it, it shows that you don't rush to conclusions without finding out more facts. And finally, stumpers. They're the off-the-wall questions that just, quite frankly, leave you stunned. But before you get going on these, take a breath and consider the psychology of why you've been asked that question. Some of these questions that come from nowhere are designed to rattle you and to see how creatively you think on your feet. Sometimes they're just designed to see if you have a sense of humor. And most people sort of panic about them. Because they're just literally any questions, they're really impossible to prepare for. Give yourself a few minutes of silence. Think about it. Take a deep breath and launch into it. One of my favorites, and probably the Microsoft label, is, why is a manhole cover round? And there aren't any official interview questions, but we've all heard this one. My favorite, if you go to Brian Groff's site on the blogs.msdn.com site, he's got a great piece about it. There are all sorts of answers. It's the most efficient use of space. And some people actually, manhole covers aren't all round. There are rectangles. So there are all sorts of answers that you can give. The tunnels are pipes, so it's easier to go through with that whole theme of circularity. There really is no right answer. It's up to the interviewer. It's up to the interviewer about what they're trying to get to. So I've got a question about sample stumpers. So why is the manhole cover round? I'd say another couple of good ones are how many cars are there, or how many gas stations are there? One of my favorite stumpers is imagine a disc spinning like a record player. Half the disc is black, half is white. How many color sensors would you have to put to determine the direction that the disc is spinning, where and when they would be placed? I'd say another good stumper that I've heard. Lots of problem-solving things get in there. Some algorithms get asked. Implement an algorithm to reverse a linked list. Okay, now do it without recursion. Or write a function that takes a string parameter and checks to see whether or not it's an integer. My favorite ones, how are M&Ms made, or how are Jelly Bellies made? There are just things out there. If Microsoft told you that they give you $5 million to start up, what would you do? So things out there. Again, there's some great sites, some great pieces, but try to understand why they're asking that question. Oftentimes you'll also see Lego in the interview. That's all about a design process. They want to see what you do, what type of design you come up with. Some people just leave it sitting there. It's all sort of a game. And again, no right answers to these things. And I'll actually encourage you to go ahead and ask them, so what are you looking for? You can answer it and then, so what are you looking for? Get a sense of where you stand. Get engaged in discussion on that. Okay, well, now we're getting to one of the hearts of the technical interviews. Have you been asked to whiteboard during an interview? See how these responses go. Still overwhelmingly no. Wow. Okay, for those of you who have had to whiteboard during an interview, what have you been asked to whiteboard? Have they been function questions, specific language, multiple cold reading? What sort of stuff have you guys been asked to do? Great. So function questions and then multiple areas. Terrific. Thanks, guys. Or gals. Folks. So, let's talk about the whiteboard presentation. Do you remember your middle school math class? You're in the 7th grade and you're just learning about algebra. You got your test back and you got points off. And you're going, well, yeah, but I got the right answer. And the teacher comes up to you and says, yeah, but you didn't show your work. And today, that is the modern version. It's the equivalent of your 7th grade algebra. So while you can go through various types of interviews, fundamentally an interviewer wants to see how you think, or more specifically, how you code. So in a lot of technical software interviews, the same way that stumpers leave your heart racing, the whiteboard can feel intimidating in this sense. So there are some really good techniques around the whiteboard. So make sure you ask the person who's asking you, or setting up the interview, ask them if there's going to be any whiteboarding or any coding questions. And then ask if you're going to be, is it going to be, they're going to watch you do it or not. One of the things is you can most certainly do to take some of the fear away is practice some of this yourself. Come up with some make them simple coding questions. There's a lot out there on the internet as well. And have a couple of your friends sit behind you as you work on the board in a room. So the good news is, as you practice it more and more, you're going to become more confident about it. Again, there's no shortage of websites with sample coding and logical questions on it. But take a critical look at the role you're interviewing for and ask, well, what could they reasonably ask me in this area? Ask your mentors for ideas and things that they've used. And then give them a copy of what you've whiteboarded and see what their comments and feedbacks are. So don't be afraid from a whiteboarding standpoint to basically show all of your work, get into the details, and fundamentally, from the standpoint of mistakes are going to happen. Focus on the problems that are going to occur and correct your work without panicking. Don't rush into your response. Just sort of get into the whole part of the technical aspect of it. So another question for you guys. Have you been part of a preview? You've actually had to sit down and write code for a specific application. It's more than just a whiteboard exercise, but actually doing that. It's one of the interesting parts that people are starting to use now are realistic job previews where they're actually asking you to sit down and solve a business problem. Again, very much like the whiteboarding exercise, you really can't prepare for it. But you just have to kind of get in there and try to find out exactly what they're doing. If it takes more than an hour or two and they haven't prepared you for that, make sure you chat with them about it, because it's really one of those issues where are they actually getting you to do some work for free, or are they really trying to understand your samples and what you can do. So during the interview, no I in team. Remember, keep your interviewer's perspective in mind. Remember to always answer what's in it for him or her, what's in it for the interviewer. You really have to put yourself in their shoes for a minute. So what would be attractive to you from that standpoint? So when I say there's no I in team, a lot of people most certainly go ahead and talk about we. And, well, we did this as a team, and the interviewers don't want to hear that part. They want to hear specifically what it is in your role. I've actually sat in interviews, in technical interviews, where there's all been sort of we's about a testing procedure. And the hiring manager got to the point and said, if you can't tell me what your specific role is on the team, then we're done. And so there really is, I know we all want to be teamwork, we all want to have this focus on teamwork, but the reality is you still have to tell them specifically what your role is. You know, we talked a little bit about attitude. Definitely a positive attitude is really important, remembering to smile through the process. Go ahead and try to answer some interview questions in the mirror and see if you're smiling when you answer them. Your believability increases as you have a positive attitude about it and a positive smile on your face. So some common sense do's and don'ts. You know, do dress appropriately. You know, really ask what the dress code is. Clearly, going to Microsoft in a three-piece suit and a tie, not going to work for most of the roles. There are some that do. You know, treat everyone you encounter with professionalism and respect. Firm handshakes are really important. Find out if the interviewer wants to be asked by their first name. And most certainly be honest and be yourself. I always say be real in these things, because you want to make sure that it's a good match for you down the long run. Always close the interview by asking for their feedback and determining next steps. I will always make sure that I ask, okay, so what does success look like in this role? How do I know I'm doing a good job in about 6 months? If you are a Gen Y candidate and your parents are hovering around, please don't. I have lots of great stories about that. We have not hired technical individuals because their parents have gotten involved in the interview and or offer process. Here's a great question. What do I do if the job isn't as advertised and I'm not interested? That's a great question. I think that, you know, if you've got a position that you applied for and all of a sudden they sort of changed it on you, or what they're telling you is not what you're interested in, you've got two choices. You can, at this point, primarily make a good impression. I think it's really important to leave them with the fact that, yes, you could do the job. The question is they should be wondering, you know, is this something they want to do? And in that sense, if you're feeling, the second choice is really to go ahead and to say to them, you know, this role doesn't quite seem to be a fit, but I'm very interested in the company. How about if there's more of whatever component is that you're missing? It's a great question. So, practice. I know it seems really simple, but fundamentally this is one of the most important areas in the entire process. No actor goes on stage without rehearsing their lines. No, your interview is no different. I mean, a baseball player doesn't go ahead and just stand up to bat and hit a baseball thrown from a pitcher. There's a lot of practice involved. So when a professional musician hits a wrong note during a concert, they keep going. They don't obsess about their mistake, and you need to get to that same level of comfort because they've practiced enough. They just know what the next note is, versus getting, oh my gosh, that wasn't what I really wanted to say. Simply put, without practice, you will not be as successful in your interviews. Following up, Really important follow-up. It's great professional etiquette to thank the interviewers afterwards, even if you're not interested in the role. But if you are, it is an opportunity to solidify why they should hire you. So whether it's an email or whether it's a card, you really need to jot down the 3 things that you wanted to reinforce from that interview. Or maybe there's an answer you'd like back. So if there's a follow-up by a phone call or a certain date or time, make sure you schedule that in your calendar. And write down a few bullet points that are going to cover those topics that you want to go over again. And even when leaving a voicemail, if you can bring up those 3 topics and just leave a really quick key as to why you're calling and why they should bring you on board. Again, the key is to be memorable here. The preparation is going to help you, but really give the interviewer the feeling of what it's going to be like with you in the role. So as we wrap up here, we've gone over some interview objectives and styles. Talked about the STAR response, most certainly going ahead and answering the situation, the task that you had, the actions you took, and the results that it created. Creating more efficiency, improved code, less errors, all of those things are important. Talked about some of the difficult questions and really trying to understand what's the interviewer's focus, where they're trying to get to. And tackling the whiteboard, make sure that you're showing your work and showing how you're coming up with the solutions, and then following up. So hopefully I've given you guys some ideas today for the interview process. For IT professionals, please continue to visit the Microsoft Thrive site at ThriveDev so you can enhance your technical skills and connect with the community. And our next webcast is going to be talking about what to look for in a job posting and how to search for jobs on December the 2nd. Wow, we're already in December. It's going to be at 9 a.m. Pacific. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to successfully search for your next job and talk about networking techniques and strategies and how to actually take that job posting and really make your application stand out. So they want to bring you in. They want to pick up the phone so you get to this interview stage. The link is below to register. And then please continue to visit our Thrive sites for more information on career development, either at Thrive or ThriveDev. Thanks very much, guys. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to field them now. Appreciate your participation today.